every Friday 12 till 2 for some happy radio.
That was Next and Too Close, and before that, Ginuwine and Ride My Pony. Let's welcome back to the show Dave Richards, of the MD of the Dreamboys. We go back to sort of your early career. You've had sort of quite a rise from sort of well, it says right from rags to Richards. You know, you're now sort of you're the man behind the most successful male stripper entertainment empire in with the Dreamboys, but you started off with sort of from humble beginnings, I suppose you could say.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, no, it hasn't, as I always say to people, it hasn't all been sunshine and rainbows. You know, as you said, from this was a story that sort of emerged and started coming out how they called it from rags to riches. It's quite an interesting story, and it just goes to show people, no matter what walk of life you come from, you can kind of make your own path in life and make your own life what it is. You know, we hear a lot of things these days of children being blamed by parents and bad parenting and et cetera, but I'm not a big believer in that, purely because I've seen people with born with silver spoons in their mouth that are born into multi-million pound families and end up on the train wreck.
Yeah, I mean,
you cannot blame parents for the way that people turn out. You choose your own path in life, and how you want to turn out is your own decision. If you want to be a criminal, you're going to be a criminal. If you want to be successful, you're going to be successful. If you want to live a normal life, then you live a normal life. It's you cannot start pointing fingers and blaming people for X, Y, and Z, because I'm sorry, but that sort of thing doesn't really wash with me.
No, you only have to look at somebody like Paris Hilton, don't you, for instance? Yeah. I mean, is it okay if we talk about your sort of early childhood and things like that?
Yeah, of course, go for it.
Yeah,
no worries.
I mean, your father was a solicitor.
Correct.
And,
he owned his own solicitor firm back in probably the 1900s.
And
that's correct. Yeah, he owned his own solicitor firm many years ago.
But then he was convicted for fraud and sent to prison.
Correct. He frauded his own company out of, which was at the time a very, very, very massive fraud. It was one of it was a very, very big fraud for back in them days. In fact, the sum of money that was frauded back, I believe it was 1982 maybe, sort of equals to probably the sum of what is worth about $2 million today. So it was quite a big.
So that left
fraud back then.
So that left your mum destitute, and you had to go and live with your grandparents then.
Well, yeah, basically, to cut a long story short, I was born into a well-off family. We wasn't poor, but we certainly, it wasn't, rich. But my father owned his own solicitor firm, etc., and unfortunately decided to fraud the company one day. And basically, at 2 years old, everything was gone. Because obviously, as you can imagine, all the money's gone, etc. It's all taken away, and my mother was left with 3 children and stuck into a council house. So from a beautiful, what I remember was a beautiful sort of, I think it was either 5 or 6 bedroom detached house. We'd ended up on a very, very run down and rough council estate. And that's kind of how my life panned out. And then my mother herself decided that she went from having what they called a perfect lifestyle to suddenly a massive reality check and realising, oh my God, this is real life now, this is reality, and she couldn't deal with it, so she left as well.
Yeah.
So there was 3 children left behind. At that point, I was then 5. My brother was 6, and my sister was 7.
Wow.
Because there's 18 months between all 3 of us. So it was we was left like that, and it was then left to the authorities and children's homes, etc. And it was. But then again, what then happened was my grandparents jumped in, which was my mother's parents. They jumped in and decided that that isn't how they wanted to see their grandchildren, and they just had 3 children themselves that had just flown the nest, so to speak. So all of them had got married and left home, and they were getting ready for their retirement years, and then bang, they're left with another 3 kids.
Yeah, but then you were expelled from school.
Yeah, I was thrown out of school at 13 years old.
Yeah.
With absolutely sort of, even though I left school at 13 years old, to be honest, most of the time when I was at school, I wasn't there. I hated school. I used to run away, and I just never I never used to fit in at school. I had a, my upbringing was very, very different to most people at school, and I never used to fit in, and I never used to go. So at 13 years old, they kind of, called my grandparents up to school and chucked me out, and then from that day on, I never went back to school, because as much as they, again, authorities tried to make me go to school, my grandparents couldn't do nothing when I left the house to go to school, and I disappeared. What can they do?
That's true. So they invited you to leave. Then you turned to boxing.
Yeah, I was kind of a bit of a lost soul. I was always obsessed with boxing. I was back when he was, what I class as a bit of a legend. I was a massive fan of Mike Tyson, a massive fan. Before he went off the rails, obviously, I was a huge fan. And I was kind of, very young, and thought, what am I going to do? I need to pull myself out of this dark hole I've got myself in, and I kind of I turned to boxing, which taught me self-discipline, self-respect, and to respect other people as well. I know a lot of people think it's quite a brutal sport, but it's actually one of these sports that teaches you, one, a lot of respect, two, a lot of self-respect, three, a lot of self-discipline. And it's actually one of these sports where it teaches you to control your anger, not lose your anger.
So then at age 14, you set up your own gardening business.
That is correct as well, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So this is where the entrepreneur began.
Yeah.
So the entrepreneur began at 14 years old. I set up my own little gardening business. I had a wheelbarrow and a load of garden tools, and I used to go around to sort of people's houses and do all their gardens and garden clearance for them, etc., etc. Because, like I said, I refused to go to school. I was one of these people that kind of that believed education wasn't the way forward. Some people might fight against that and say, well, that's ridiculous. That's not true. But I always say, well, look at Sir Alan Sugar, look at Richard Branson, look at people like Simon Cowell. Again, you read about them and you hear about them, and they was exactly the same. They never done well at school. They all left school early. But look at them now. They're right there is three of the most powerful men in the world on an entrepreneur and business basis. So yeah, I set up my own little gardening business, and while the other kids at 14 years old were sort of at school, doing classes and lessons, I was sort of making myself, anything between sort of 50 to 100 quid a week.
That's not bad,
Well, for a 14-year-old back then was a lot of money.
That was indeed, yeah. It's about what.
So I had all the newest computer games and whatever else, all by myself, which was quite cool.
See, hard work does have its rewards. What the other thing I need to speak to you about? When you just after you sort of got into the modelling business and just before you started the Dreamboys, you were struggling financially, and you used your last £250 to set up the Dreamboys. Is that correct?
That is exactly what happened. So after seeing this stripper, you can imagine I'd worked in the music industry. At a very young age, I'd done a lot. At a very young age, I had done a lot of stuff. Literally crammed what most people would into their entire life into literally 10 years. So after sort of seeing this stripper and stuff, I unfortunately I was never good. I was never good with money. I was young. I was earning good money. I had my own little gardening business, and I went into sort of music, and then I went into modelling. At a very young age, I was earning some very, very good money. My problem was as far as it went in one hand, it went out the other. So I used to, party and spend money left, right, and centre, here, there, and everywhere, and nights out, and this and this and this, and it got to the point where I was kind of left with about, I think I had something like £270 to be exact in my bank account and stuff, and I saw this stripper, and then I went home that night and had this crazy idea of one of these strip groups and stuff, and that was when I put my £250 into my first ever website to be built, which was when the internet had just sort of first launched and just come about. And I put £250 into a website, etc., and it just blew up.
Yeah.
I remember, I put 250 quid in, and within the first year, I turned over £107,000.
Wow, that was
250 quid, and then within a year, turned it into £107,000.
And that was what, back 10 years ago?
That was in more than that. Yeah, I'm trying to think when it was. It was like,
Oh, 1997, wasn't it? 1997.
Yeah, it was right back then. Yeah,
So was that 16 years ago? Seems a long.
Yeah, many years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
When the internet first boomed.
Yeah.
When the first boom came around, and etc. And so that 250 quid turned into £107,000 in the first year.
Wow. But it's around that time you had trouble with you had heart trouble.
Yeah.
And you had to
the rock and roll lifestyle that I was living as a young man growing up. All of a sudden I ended up with heart problems, and I was taken into I'll never forget where it was. It was the QE2 hospital in Welwyn Garden City.
I know it well. I was born in Welwyn Garden.
I was rushed in there. I was out shopping. I remember being out shopping thinking, my heart doesn't quite feel right. I think we've all been there before, where you kind of, you have this little heart flutter. You just get a flutter, this little flutter, and you go, oh, what was that? And it's gone. It bypasses. But about 7 hours later, mine was still fluttering away, and I thought something's not right, and et cetera, et cetera. So I thought I better do something about it. So I was, I was rushed into the QE2 hospital in Welwyn Garden City, put onto a heart monitor, and within minutes, and I'm talking within minutes, I was in the resus area, which is like the back area of A&E, where nobody goes unless you're in serious trouble. And I was in the resus area of the QE2 with nurses and doctors asking me, what the hell have you done to your heart?
So, are you actually...
And I said, well, I don't know, please, you tell me.
So are you actually a local boy? Are you Welwyn Garden City area boy, originally?
I grew up in Welwyn Garden City, that's where I grew up.
It's where I was born as well, actually, ironically.
There you go, my friend, yeah.
Yeah.
I grew up in Welwyn Garden City, yeah. So
that's... okay, well, we're almost sort of out of time for today. So what we'll do, we'll talk a little bit about the Dreamboys at the moment. We're you're in the middle of a 54-day UK tour.
That 54 date ended up turning into 65.
65 dates. So the tickets are not selling well then?
Yeah, so it went from a 54-day tour to, well, actually, it started at a 45-day, went to 54, and ended up 65.
Really? So you're making them work hard at the moment then? Because you've also got a sort of a group that you've got your own clubs, haven't you? 8 Dreamboys clubs? That's
correct. There is 8 Dreamboy clubs across the country. They are in London, Brighton, Bournemouth, Birmingham, Cardiff, Edinburgh, Newcastle, and Manchester.
Yeah, that's unbelievable, isn't it? Unbelievable.
It's quite and then what we do with the London show that's based in London's West End, we take that out on a massive 65-day UK theatre tour around the country.
Because it's called the Dreamboys Fit and Famous Tour 2013.
The boys are fit. As for the word famous, they're getting there.
Well, perhaps you should put infamous. That might be even better. So
that might be better, yeah.
You're playing 4 shows in the Sticks area. The first one is at the Alban Arena on Friday the 13th of September.
That is correct.
And then you're going to the Gordon Craig in Stevenage, which I know well, and that's on Friday the 25th of September. 25th of October. Sorry, that's Friday the 25th of October.
That is correct.
And then off to the Bedford Corn Exchange, and that's another Friday. That's the 1st of November.
Yeah.
And then the final time people can see you in the area is at the Fabulous Grove Theatre in Dunstable, and that's on a Wednesday, and that's the 27th of November.
So we're in the Hearts and Beds there, Hearts, Beds and sort of
Bucks area
quite a few times this year.
You are indeed. So you're bringing them home, or bring them to your home area.
I am bringing them home. Funny enough, we actually did the Gordon Craig Theatre last year in Stevenage.
Yeah.
So we did that on our tour last year, and it sold out very quickly. And to be honest, it's virtually sold out now as well. So it's getting very close to. I think last time I looked, there was about 50 seats left.
Wow, and you're downstairs in the concert hall, are you? Downstairs in the sports centre bit?
As far as I'm aware.
Yeah, that's a huge arena, so you know you've done really well. So if anybody wants to book their tickets, they need to either go to your website. You have a website, don't you, for the Dreamboys?